Good morning, YouTube. This is the Fat Health Teacher. Have you ever wondered why people siesta in the afternoon in some places? Take that afternoon nap, whether it be kids or adults or that kind of thing. I think the answer is because they can sleep through kind of the worst heat of the day. Um, I actually was in my classroom this morning, my new one, trying to get it organized. I got a bookshelf organized. I got a couple of pieces of furniture moved, and then I was done. My watch is saying that it's only 94 degrees outside. My car is saying it's 109. It's probably somewhere in the middle, but it is crazy hot. Um, Trying to keep hydrated, which is important. And I wanted to talk to you real quick about the heat problems. And it may not be as quick as I like, but um, I am no stranger to heat. I grew up on the Navajo reservation. It gets hot. You do not go outside between the hours of 10 and 2. Sometimes you don't go outside between the hours of 10 and 4. Okay? Just because the sun is just like scorching and it's just beating down on you, and there's really no escape unless you can find shade. But when the sun's overhead, there's very little shade. All right, you'll notice that I'm yawning a lot. One of the signs of heat issues, kind of one of the early warning symptoms, is fatigue. So after I do this video and upload it, I'm probably going to go take a nap because it's hot. And my bedroom has a fan, and we've got the cooler running, and that would be nice. Okay, so kind of the first level of heat issues is rash. So you can get a rash. I remember when I was playing volleyball, went to a summer camp down in Tucson, and when our coach was driving us there, I was sitting in the back, and since I'm a tall person, I had to have kind of my knees up, and so that meant that the back part of my knees kind of met, and it was really hot. And even though we had the air conditioner running, so I would get heat rash, behind my knees and my armpits. As I've gotten heavier, sometimes I'll get it in my inguinal folds, which is kind of where your belly hangs down. It is unpleasant. And the only way to make it go away is to get out of the heat and to kind of let those areas air out, right? So I remember one time my heat rash was so bad, I was basically just like this, trying to get relief. Or I would shove, some napkins or something like that in my pits just so that the moisture was wicking away and it wouldn't allow the heat rash to worsen. Um, Additionally, you'll see as one of the first stages of problems with heat is cramping. So if you're cramping, that's letting you know that you are not hydrated well enough, or you might be low on your salt levels. Typically, you're not going to need to seek medical help for either the rashes or cramping unless with the rashes, infection occurs, or with cramping, if the cramping is continuing and it's not resolving on its own. If that's the case, then it may be worth it to go to the urgent care or possibly to the ER so that you can get an IV and get some of the fluids that you need. All right, the second level of heat issues, and I've got my notes here from the Mayo Clinic, is heat exhaustion. Okay, I've actually suffered heat exhaustion at least once. I remember being at a summer camp or something. We were running around doing crazy stuff outside, not drinking enough water, and then I pretty much passed out. Okay, and this is one of the signs of heat exhaustion. The big indicator, as far as the difference between heat exhaustion and heat stroke, is with heat exhaustion, you're still sweating. So this is where you have the sweat pouring down, you're thirsty, you might be a little bit confused. If you are able to pee, your pee is really dark, it may have an odor to it. Your skin is pale, you may have nausea or vomiting, dizziness, that kind of thing, right? And the best thing that you can do for that is rehydrate and get to a cool place. Okay? And if your symptoms do not resolve within about 15 minutes, then the recommendation from the Mayo Clinic is actually that you go to the ER. Okay? Because those symptoms need to improve. If they don't improve, then you are going to transition into heat stroke. Now, the biggest indicator that you are in heat stroke versus heat exhaustion is that you're not sweating anymore. The amount of water in your system has decreased to the point that you can't even produce sweat. This is a terrible, terrible thing. So, if you have somebody who is suffering from heat stroke, all right, they may or may not be conscious. They're not going to be sweating. Their body temperature is elevated. If they are awake, they may have nausea or vomiting. They may experience seizures. They may be confused. They may complain of a headache or dizziness. Their skin is red, hot, and dry. Okay? Basically, they're cooking. All right? And if you don't take care of this, they're going to cook, just like a chicken in the oven. Um, the thing that you can do for this person, or the thing that you need to do for this person, is first, call 911. And second, get them into a cool place and get them cooled down. And at this point, it's really, really important. Like, if you have access to a hose them down. If you can get them into a bathtub, get them into a bathtub so that they're fully immersed. For both heat exhaustion and heat stroke, they're talking about removing any non-essential clothing. So that would be shirts, that would be shoes, socks, pants. And the idea is that you're exposing more skin so that the body can radiate the heat out instead of maintaining it inside. Okay? Keeping that heat in is not, it's not a good thing. All right? Let's see. Okay, so what are the best ways to prevent these heat issues? Best ways to prevent are to wear light and loose clothing. So this shirt, terrible for the heat, right? You want something that's kind of nice and linen. This type of shirt is actually going to keep a lot of the heat in. Probably the only thing going for it is if I start sweating, what will actually happen is the sweat will evaporate and that will help me cool down. Okay? You want to make sure that you're drinking plenty of fluids. If you know that you're going to be outside doing whatever kind of activity, you want to get at least 24 ounces 2 hours before and then 8 ounces right before you start. And while you're doing this vigorous activity, you should be taking a break every 20 minutes to drink another 8 ounces of water. This sounds like a ton of water, but it's important for you to keep your levels up. Okay? I remember one time my brother, who was in the military, was telling me that where he was stationed, it was so hot that he was producing no pee. This is not not good. This is a dangerous thing, because your kidneys can shut down, and you can have swelling of the brain, and you can have seizures, which I've already talked about. You can have decreased blood volume, which means that parts of your body that need food and need oxygen aren't going to get it because you don't have the blood volume to get it there. It can cause death. All right, so keep an eye out. Stay out of the sun as much as you can, especially when it's really hot outside. Wear a hat, use sunscreen. Electrolytes. Okay, so I tell my students that they don't need to be drinking Gatorade, right? But if they are participating in two-a-days and they're outside for it, then I would recommend at least one Gatorade every couple of hours, because Gatorade is going to have the electrolytes. You can create your own electrolyte solution by basically dissolving a bit of salt into water and then drinking that. You got to be careful, because if you overdo it, it's going to make you vomit. Okay? All right, dehydration is another big factor. Now, the reason dehydration is not kind of just included in the heat exhaustion, heat stroke, we know that it's there, but dehydration can happen for other reasons as well. It can happen if somebody is having nausea, vomiting, so they can't keep any fluids down. If they are expelling fluids from the other end, so we're talking diarrhea, that kind of stuff. If someone has the dry mouth, they're tired, if they're thirsty, they have decreased urine, if they're somebody who's still wearing diapers, a dry diaper for more than 3 hours is a concern unless you're potty training. All right? If they've got dry skin, if they're constipated, if they're dizzy, these are all things that are indicating that there's not enough water in that person's system. Okay? So you want to make sure that you're getting them hydrated. Now, don't hand them a gallon jug of water and say, chug this, because that's too fast. You want them to drink, but you don't want them to go overboard. All right? And I said tired was one of the symptoms. Additionally, if it is severe, so if we're talking like probably needs medical intervention, kind of extreme, which I actually had to take my son into the hospital a couple of years ago for this, because he wasn't peeing. He wasn't drinking, he wasn't peeing, and he was carrying a fever. He had a fever. So I took him in, they put him on an IV, and he was so tired and so just like whatever, that when they stuck him with the needle, he hardly even flinched. Okay? This is how you know something's wrong with your kid. When you have a kid who normally is running around and they just seem like, you know, they're on speed or something, uh, and then this kid is voluntarily choosing to sit down and stay still, this is telling you that something's wrong with them. Okay? All right, so we have the irritability, confusion. At this point, all mucous membranes are going to be dry, so that means the stuff in the nose, in the mouth, in the, if they're female, in the genitalia. Decreased or no urine, sunken eyes, shriveled and dry skin. If you've ever seen a plant that needs water, it kind of wilts and it does that. Well, our skin kind of does the same thing, except what'll happen is you pinch, and when you let go, instead of it bouncing back to the way it's supposed to, it actually will stay peaked for a little bit, okay? And then it'll go back. Decreased blood pressure, increased heart rate, increased breathing, the whole triad thing. When one does something, the other two have to respond in order to maintain. The person does not produce tears. If they're crying, they may have fever, they may be delirious, okay? So yeah, these are all, they're kind of scary. I was talking about it because it's really hot outside. But the other thing I wanted to do is kind of my public service announcement, which is, if you have animals or children, please pay attention to where they're going and what they're doing. All right. In my mother group on Facebook, one of the mothers didn't realize how hot the ground was, and they were playing in the pool. Okay. And the pavement around the pool was really, really hot. And since the kid was getting in and out of the water, she didn't even, like, it wasn't even on her radar, right? She just wasn't even considering that this could be an issue. The kid got second-degree burns on his feet, okay, or at least one of his feet. And this is not because she was neglectful or anything. It's just, it's one of those things that you don't really think about because you're an adult and you have thicker skin and you know to go put on shoes or flip-flops or whatever, right? Whereas kids may not be registering because they may get the pain signal, but they may not understand what it means. Okay. So if you have pets or children, please, please, please don't leave them in your car. I've talked about leaving kids in cars before. When the temperatures are where they are right now, it can be deadly in 5 minutes. All right. I remember one time my grandmother in Northern California went into the post office and she instructed me to stay in the car, and I was sitting there and I was just sweating and sweating and sweating and sweating, and I really wanted to get out of the car just to cool down, but I did not want to have her wrath. I was old enough to get out of the car, and finally she came back out. It felt like it had been 10 or 15 minutes, but it may only have been a few. All right, but it was awful. Please don't do that to your dog. Please don't do that to your pets or to your kid. You know, where I grew up was pretty far from decent shopping. So if we wanted to go and get in some good shopping, we would drive to Gallup, which was an hour and a half away. And I remember one time we bought this really neat plant and we put it in the back, and it was so hot that it did not survive. Like, I think we stopped somewhere for dinner or something like that, and then the next time we opened the trunk, it was back there and it was dead. Okay? Because it was so hot that it just cooked it. Last year when I was in the Phoenix area, I was visiting my sister and we went to a water park. Well, I didn't want to take my phone to a water park because, you know, water, phones typically don't go together. So I left my phone in the back of my car. Okay? It got so hot in my car that my phone refused to turn on. It took 20 minutes of holding it in front of the cooler, in front of the fan, okay, the AC in the car, before it would even power on. It was that hot. And it's good that it had that protection, right? Because if I had just turned it on, then who knows what could have happened. Like, I could have fried it. All right. Keep water available. When I'm traveling and it's really hot outside, I do try to keep a couple extra jugs of water just in case the car breaks down and we're stuck somewhere. I don't want to be without water. Keeping some snacks is also a good idea. All right, the other thing I wanted to remind you of is that if you are an athlete, or if you have an athlete and you're doing 2-a-days or you're doing 3-a-days or that kind of thing, people have died during these events typically because they're outside while they're doing the activities. Please stay hydrated. If you're a coach, then you are responsible for the health of your athletes, which means you need to give them time to go get water. You need to give them time to go and get their Gatorade. Okay? Don't put your athletes at risk just because you're trying to push them. I get that. I get that you want them to work hard. But you also want them to be around to play for the remainder of the season. Okay? All right.
I'm hungry, Mom.
This is the Fat Health Teacher signing out. Stay cool, and I probably won't talk to you tomorrow because we're traveling. I may talk to you on Friday. Thank you.